Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the daily quiz discussion for the 18th of July 2022. Beginning with the first question of the day, which reads, the State of the Economy report is released by A. Ministry of Finance, B. Financial Stability and Development Council, C. Reserve Bank of India, and option D. Niti Aayog. Now, what is the context? This article from today's The Indian Express takes note of the recently released State of the Economy report by the Reserve Bank of India. This report takes note of the inflation pressures not just in the Indian economy but in the global economy at large. While the US inflation rate shot up to a 14-year high of 9.1% in June, India reported a retail inflation of around 7.01% in June. This is down from 7.07% observed in May and 7.79% observed in April. So India has been facing high inflation rate, but the inflation rate has been decreasing over the last couple of months. Apart from the inflationary pressures in the economy, the article also takes note of the depreciation in the Indian rupee as well as the record outflow of portfolio investments from India. Coming back to the question. From our discussion, it becomes clear that the answer to this question would be Reserve Bank of India. Also, what are the other important reports that are released or published by the Reserve Bank of India? These include reports such as the Financial Stability Report, Report on Trend and Progress of Banking in India, and the Report on Currency and Finance. These are the three important reports released by the Reserve Bank of India apart from the State of the Economy report. Moving on to the second question, which reads, which of the following statements is or are correct? The two question statements are as follows. The first one, while India has had a woman president, there has been no woman vice president thus far in India. The second statement, the vice president can be removed from office by a resolution passed by the joint sitting of the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. Please have a look at the options given below. What is the context? The vice presidential elections are due to be held very soon. After the ruling alliance, that is the National Democratic Alliance, announced its vice president candidate, the opposition has also announced Margaret Alva as its candidate for the vice presidential election. Also, this article from the Indian Express takes note of the process of the election of vice president in India and discusses the role of a vice president in India. Coming back to the question. The first statement is correct. Why? Because India has had a woman president. It was Pratibha Patil. But so far, India has never had a woman vice president. In this context, it would be worthwhile to know who were the vice presidents of India. This included personalities such as Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, who was the first vice president of India. He was followed by Zakir Hussain, V.V. Giri, Gopal Swarup Pathak, B.D. Jetty, Muhammad Idiyatullah, who had also served as the Chief Justice of India. Then we had Ramaswamy Venkataraman, Shankar Dayal Sharma, K.R. Narayanan, Krishnan Kant, Bairon Singh Shekhawat, Muhammad Ahmed Ansari, and the currently serving Venkaya Naidu. Consider the second statement. This statement is wrong. Why? Because the vice president can be removed from office by a resolution of the Rajya Sabha passed by an effective majority and agreed by the Lok Sabha with a simple majority. There is no provision for a joint sitting of the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. And this removal process is mentioned in Article 67B of the Indian Constitution. Also note, Supreme Court can also remove the Vice President for committing electoral malpractices and not fulfilling the eligibility criteria for becoming a Vice President. Since the question asks for the correct statement, the answer to this question would be option A, one only. Moving on to the third question, it reads, the Sanda method of cultivation is associated with which of the following crops? The options are as follows. A. Sugarcane, B. Rice, C. Wheat, and D. Pulses. What is the context? This article from today's The Indian Express takes note of the fall in the area of cultivation of rice. The article attributes to the deficient rainfall in some key areas associated with the cultivation of rice. In the context of deficient as well as delayed rainfall in key rice growing areas, the article discusses the Sanda or the double transplanting method of paddy cultivation. Note, in traditional practices of cultivation of paddy, the farmers first sow paddy seeds in nurseries. Here, they are raised into young plants. These seedlings are then uprooted and replanted in the main field, that is usually around 10 times the size of the nursery seedbed. Note, the nursery sowing generally happens before the monsoon rains, and the transplantation happens after the arrival of the monsoons. Hence, timely rainfall is very important for the cultivation of rice. The Sanda or the double transplanting method of paddy cultivation is a little different. This is practiced mostly in conditions of delayed rainfall. The first step is common, that is, you raise young plants of rice in nurseries. However, instead of directly replanting them in the main field, in the Sanda method of cultivation, the seedlings are uprooted after 25 days in the nursery and replanted in a field that is only about twice the former's area. When replanted, these plants establish themselves and begin tillering and are thus rejuvenated for the next 10 to 15 days. When the rains come, they are again uprooted and are planted in the main field. Hence, there are two replantings done here. Now, what are the advantages of this Sanda method? It has been found that the paddy yields from Sanda are better than the regular one-step transplanting. Why is this so? Because in this method, the plants have already tillered and their establishment in the main field would be almost 100% with very little mortality. Hence, the yields are 15 to 20% more. Also, this method of cultivation offers a way to deal with delayed rainfall. However, one of the major disadvantages of this method is the higher cost involved in transplanting because this requires human labor. Coming back to the question. From our discussion, it is clear that the answer to this question is option B, rice. Moving on to the fourth question. It reads, consider the following pairs of local festival and associated state. There are four pairs given here. The first one being Bonalu, Telangana. The second pair, Losar, Nagaland. The third pair, Karchi Puja, Tripura. And the fourth pair, Gangaur Festival, Gujarat. How many of the above pairs are correctly matched? Please have a look at the options. What is the context? This picture from the Hindu takes note of the devotees dressed as Potaraju, that is the brother of goddess Kali, dancing as part of the Bonalu celebrations in Hyderabad. Coming back to our question. Note, Bonalu is a Telangana traditional Hindu festival centered on the goddess Mahakali. This festival is celebrated annually in the twin cities of Hyderabad and Sikandrabad as well as in other parts of the state. So the first pair is correctly matched. Consider the second festival, Losar. Losar is the Tibetan New Year. It is marked predominantly in the state of Arunachal Pradesh and also in some parts of Sikkim. Hence, the second pair is wrong. Consider the third festival, Karchi Puja. Karchi Puja involves the worship of 14 gods of Tripura and is celebrated in the month of July-August. It involves the sacrifices of cattle to the earth god. It is associated with the state of Tripura. Hence, the third pair is correctly matched. Gangaur festival is celebrated for 18 days in honor of goddess Parvati, mostly by the women folk of Rajasthan. Note, Gangaur festival is also celebrated in certain parts of Madhya Pradesh. Hence, the fourth pair is wrongly matched. Since the question asks for the correctly matched pairs, the answer to this question would be B, two pairs only. Moving on to the last question of the day. This is a question from the UPSC 2019 Prelims General Studies Paper 1. The question reads, consider the following. Deification of the Buddha, treading the path of Bodhisattvas, image worship and rituals. Which of the above is or are the features of Mahayana Buddhism? Please have a look at the options. Note, Mahayana Buddhism is one of the main existing branches of Buddhism. It considers Buddha as a god rather than a teacher and began worshipping Buddha's image. Also, unlike Hinayana, it involves a lot of rituals. Also note, the emergence of bodhisattvas is central to Mahayana sect of Buddhism. Bodhisattvas are perceived as deeply compassionate beings who accumulated merit through their efforts and are trying to help others to achieve salvation. Note here, deification means exalting to the position of a god. Hence, the correct answer to this question would be option D, 1, 2, and 3. Moving on to the fact of the day, sessions of the Parliament. What is the context? The monsoon session of the Indian Parliament is due to start soon. And as part of the preparation for this session, the government met with the floor leaders of political parties. The Union Minister for Parliamentary Affairs requested all parties for cooperation for the smooth functioning of the Parliament. There were also calls by the serving Defence Minister for healthy discussion in the Parliament. In this context, let us understand a few basic aspects related to sessions of Parliament. What do you mean by session? A session of Parliament is the period spanning between the first sitting of a House and its prorogation. Now, what is prorogation? We'll understand later. Generally, there are three sessions in a year. What are they? They are the budget session, the monsoon session, and the winter session. While the budget session is held between February to May, the monsoon session is held between July to September, and the winter session between November to December. Note, the maximum gap between two sessions of parliaments cannot be more than 6 months. In other words, the parliament should meet at least twice a year. So the minimum condition is they should meet at least twice a year, but in practice there are three sessions which takes place of the parliament. Note, it is the president who summons each house of the parliament to meet. Also, there are some important terminology which we should be aware of with respect to the functioning of the sessions of the parliament. What are they? We have adjournment, adjournment sine, and prorogation. Now let us understand the difference between these three. Note, a session of parliament can consist of many meetings. Such a sitting of the parliament can be terminated by one of these three options. That is, they can be terminated either by adjournment, adjournment sine, or prorogation. Note, while an adjournment suspends the working in a sitting for a specified time, adjournment sine involves terminating a sitting of the parliament for an indefinite period. Note, the power of adjournment as well as adjournment sine lies with the presiding officer of the House, that is, the Speaker in the case of Lok Sabha and the Chairman in the case of the Rajya Sabha. Now, what do we mean by prorogation then? See, after the presiding officer declares the House adjourned sine, after the business of a session is completed, the President issues a notification for a prorogation of the session. Hence, prorogation is done by the President, while these two are done by presiding officer. This is all we have for today's discussion. Thank you for being with us.